Lame!
I mean, anybody could do that.
You couldn't do that.
You could do that.
I could do that.
You know, we could all do that. Let's do that.
What are we gonna do? Fly to Tahoe, rent a bobsled, and go down a mountain in the middle of the night?
Good plan.
I just wanted to let you know about my study group.
Oh, don't be a fuddy-duddy. I'll be your study buddy.
I'm about to embark on one of the great challenges of my scientific career.
This work right here is going to change history.
I think this is going to be our greatest mission.
I don't have time to study. I'll never get into Stanford.
I got big plans for you tonight. I got maps, I got charts. I'm going to see you through this because my credibility is on the line.
It's at this point that you'll want to start taking notes.
Welcome to the Sitcom Study, the podcast where we contemplate the TV shows we grew up with and search for the truth and wisdom within the tropes and cliches. And Amy, what are we talking about today?
Well, get on the podium, Jay, because it's time for the Olympic Games.
We are talking about the Olympics. The fact that this trope has anything to do with athletics and physical activity might be your first clue that this was not necessarily my idea for a trope. We have another very special guest, someone who's basically devoted his whole life, as far as I can tell, to sports and the intersections between sports and culture. David Smith, hello. How are you?
Welcome.
Hello. Thank you. I'm doing fabulous. How are you?
I am great, and I can't wait to talk about all these shows. Now, this is another case where the guest came with a lineup. This was basically your idea. So why don't you explain, why don't you explain sort of who you are, your relationship with sports and all that, and then we can get into this Olympics angle.
Oh, fabulous.
See if you can do that in less than 2 minutes.
So I call myself basically a sports professional, which is a very generalized term. I work as an applied sports psychologist. I'm a strength and conditioning coach, a sport coach, personal trainer, group fitness instructor. I'm currently doing my PhD in sports science, so I'm doing research science in various aspects of cognitive psychology and exercise science. As well, I work in sports diversity, specifically on LGBT in sports, doing professional education, community development, as well for the sports psychology community also. Not just with sport, but also exercise and physical activity as well. It's a big passion of mine. And a lot of it's rooted in the Olympics, which is why I wanted to come on and talk about this particular trope, because a lot of this passion of mine was inspired by the Olympic Games itself. So I thought it would be a fun topic now that we have the Paris 2024 Olympics coming up here in August.
We'll have our crossover, just like all of these episodes from NBC had their crossover.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, exactly. So let's start there, because I feel like my answer is going to be much more kind of grumpy. What is your what does the Olympics mean to you, David, and why is it such an inspiration?
Well, one of the things I really love about the Olympics is how it helps us to realize sport as a platform to create a common ground for the diversity of cultures, the diversity of ideologies, the diversity of peoples, in so many regards. You know, you see country borders, languages, all sorts of things that can easily separate us apart. Especially, you know, nowadays we got all this polarization in the world with politics and religion, all this stuff. Sport has served as a platform that brings people together, and that's rooted in the basic ideology of the Olympics movement itself, not just in the modern Olympics, but also the ancient Olympics. So in my opinion, if we could fight wars through sports and just put people on the soccer pitch or put people in, you know, doing swim races and stuff like that, if that was the way to solve our problems, we would be, you know, way better off, because in the end, people are physically active, having fun, and everybody, you know, comes out safe and well overall. So.
Yeah,
athletic diplomacy.
The way people rally around professional sports is like basically this sort of healthy tribalism. It's like one of the few ways that people can be like, I'm from this place, and so I want that team to win because they're the best, and you guys stink, and we're the best. It's like a healthy outlet for that energy. Amy, do you have a relationship with the Olympics? Were you into this?
Not particularly. Like, I think like everybody, I would get into them every, 4 years now, every 2 years, when they come around, and we would always watch together as a family. We were big figure skating fans. In the Winter Olympics, we were big gymnastics fans. In the Summer Olympics, and then didn't really pay much attention to either of those things, in the intervening years. But it was always something that was just on, and we enjoyed it.
Yeah, I feel like my experience with the Olympics is there was an Atari game. This might be before your time, David, but the Atari 2600, popular video game console of the early 80s. They had a Winter Games Atari game where you could do like the slalom and the cross-country skiing and stuff. I kind of liked that. I think
he was definitely an inside kid.
At some point, I watched the movie The Cutting Edge with D.B. Sweeney.
Toe pick.
Yeah, yes, exactly. That was for a long time probably the bulk of my Olympics knowledge. Yeah, I don't know. For the most part, my experience of the Olympics was like the things that I wanted to watch on TV wouldn't be on because the Olympics was on.
How dare you cancel my Golden Girls for the Olympics?
Yeah, exactly. But in terms of what it means for these sitcoms, I feel like it's kind of like we were talking about with our chess episodes. Like, I feel like the Olympics is a shorthand in our culture for, like, excellence, for a certain thing that, like, people devote their whole lives to becoming really good. Yeah, at this thing, and the best in the world. And so I feel like it's inherently, it's sort of rife with like sitcom potential to have, if you have a show about a bunch of goofballs who aren't that good at stuff and don't do anything right, then like, yeah, of course, to somehow juxtapose them with the Olympics, it writes itself.
Which is why exactly I was excited about this topic, because it's exactly what we're going to be discussing today.
Yes, definitely. So, Amy, what's our lineup? What did we watch?
We are watching MASH, Season 6, Episode 11, The MASH Olympics. Dharma and Greg, first time on the podcast, Season 1, Episode 17, the official Dharma and Greg episode of the 1998 Winter Olympics. The Goldbergs, Season 3, Episode 16, Edward Eddie the Eagle Edwards. And Superstore, Season 2, technically Episode 0, because it aired in the summer during the Olympics before the season started. But if you're looking for it on streaming, it's Episode 2-1, called Olympics.
Yeah, so starting with MASH, we covered MASH before on our season finales episode. This was not something I was super into as a kid. I'll say again what I said then. When you're watching MASH, at any given time, about 90% of the pixels on your TV are going to be brown, tan, or olive green.
I thought you were going to shout out just the sexiness of Alan Alda one more time.
That was something I discovered later.
Alan Alda,
so funny.
Girl. Alan Alda during MASH years. And the actor who played BJ, I can't remember his name.
Yeah. Honeycutt, the relationship between the two of them, they have such a bromance. I'm so in love with it.
Yeah, they've both got that lanky sort of, 70s guy thing going on. But yeah, MASH to me was just too dusty. It was a bunch of grown-ups at a war, so I was never into it as a kid, even though, of course, I always knew its reputation as one of the great shows. David, were you a MASH guy? Do you have a lot of MASH experience?
I have MASH experience. I won't say it's my favorite or one of my favorites, but I definitely watched it a lot as a kid growing up because my dad was a big fan of it. I mean, he grew up, right in that era. He was born around 1960, so he went through the whole Vietnam era and that whole growing up phase, and thankfully was too young to be drafted. But, MASH was kind of a huge sitcom that really reflected, a lot of the things that he grew up with. So when I was a kid, we used to watch it like all the time on reruns. And when I got back into it during the pandemic and just binged watched the whole thing, I realized, wow, this is a very brilliant show, like very smart show. So I definitely became a bigger fan of it.
You've watched all of MASH?
Oh, yeah.
Well, and I have to say, this episode was very fun, but it actually kind of, it made MASH lose credibility for me a little bit in terms of the realism of this show and the way it's portraying the armed services. Like this overlaps a little bit like we talked about with Brooklyn Nine-Nine. When you're making a show about a police precinct, an army outfit or something, you're walking this very sort of tightrope between like making it funny, trying to make it credible, but also understanding it's not a documentary. People are, tuning in for laughs or whatever. The fact that this ultimately devolves into a sort of office picnic type thing just made it, I didn't seem like the most down to earth storyline. But
it's funny that you add that, because I was thinking when I was watching it how not necessarily in its depiction of military culture, but more of the way that they edited this episode or structured it, I guess, because I was thinking in terms of what MASH can do as a potential, this episode wasn't the strongest on their list. I mean, it wasn't the worst. It was like a solid mid-tier episode, but there was definitely like, in a few of this, I was thinking like, there's a lot of things here that don't really connect as well as they should. Maybe it's because of the limited timeline or what, but I mean, that's a whole thing on its own.
It's
right?
definitely sitcom-y, it's very tropey and sitcom-y.
I think the point of MASH in general, most episodes, especially, I mean, we're midway through the series. This is season 6, right? Like at this point, they've hit their stride. They've figured out who they are. When the last episode we watched was the end of season 1, and season 1 didn't have great ratings, so they retooled some things, and season 2 was a little bit different. It became more of what it is, what we just saw, which was they're paying attention to the leisure time, right? There's every now and then they'll have a really dramatic, like ER style episode where they're dealing with something, a very special episode kind of a thing. But most of the time it's their downtime. It's a glimpse at military life behind the scenes, right? That people, like when people came back from the Korean War, they didn't necessarily talk about everything they had gone through, right? But in this case, this was showing a slice of what leisure time might look like and not the scary side.
Yeah, there was a time like just earlier generations, more of the population had experience in the military. And so this was one of the things that you would choose. Some shows take place in an office. Some shows take place in somebody's living room. Like for a lot of people, whether it's an F Troop or a MASH or whatever, the Gomer Pyle, the notion that, that would be like a setting that a lot of people can relate to was more of a thing in yesteryear.
Well, and you talked about the, the downtime, right? And when you're in a situation like that where you're dealing with some horrific stuff day in and day out and, things are getting crazy, I mean, you have to find ways to keep yourself sane and keep yourself occupied and entertained. I mean, you're stuck in the middle of some barren land where you've got limited resources and, you've seen all these atrocities and there's nothing you can really do to kind of entertain yourself or do anything. You can't go to town. You can't go to the movies or rather, you're just kind of stuck in a tent. So, I think that's where MASH, like you said, highlights in terms of, okay, well, what do you do in those off times, and how do you keep your sanity?
You build your own distillery and make martinis. That's number one.
And you form a sort of like Jim and Dwight-esque rivalry with each other, with pranks and stuff.
Oh, and then you constantly try to get out of the military. Right? So the last episode that we watched of this, we didn't get to see Klinger. He hadn't joined the show yet because it was end of season 1, and he comes in season 2. And so we get to see him in all of his glory. He's wearing fascinators. In full Klinger, right? So the premise of this episode is kind of twofold. There's this guy, Ames, who is he's a career army guy. He's going to get kicked out of the army because he's put on too much weight. And so he's like, oh, well, may as well just give up the ghost and eat everything. And then Alan Alda and BJ Honeycutt, they're like, hey, we can help you. Don't do that. Like, we can help you lose, 20 pounds in 10 days. That's probably not very healthy, but that's what they're going to do. So they're going to help him so that he won't lose his pension and benefits and everything because he's going to get kicked out. And then Klinger hears that you can get kicked out if you're overweight. So he decides, all right, I'm going to eat all of the things.
Double down.
So he's spends
like
the entire episode walking around this giant salami that he's just like eating. It makes it like it hurts my stomach just thinking about it.
It makes him sick too.
He's in full dress. He does. He ends up getting sick, right? He's in full dress and a fascinator. Sometimes he has a wig. Usually has on earrings. Like very well accessorized.
He's very pretty.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Hang on. We need to slow down here because there's a few things that I need to clarify. Because you guys, with the fascinator, you're talking about the cook now, right? The chef? Or you're talking about the guy
at this
who wants
point in the show, he's a cook. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Before we get to him, let's just set up, in terms of tracking the trope, in the very beginning of this episode, you hear the PA announcing something about the results from the Helsinki Olympics.
Yes.
Right? So this is going to be like a lot of the shows immediately setting up that this is sort of a backdrop. Like whatever else is going on in the show, it's like, oh, by the way, this takes place at the time that the Olympics are sort of in the air and everybody's talking about it.
Right.
And in terms of
so in real life, this airs in November 1977. There aren't any Olympics going on. There aren't any Olympics on the horizon. It's just they are in their phases in time in the Korean War.
Right.
They're in the winter of 1952, and that's when the Helsinki Olympics were.
Right. And then meanwhile, we've got the overweight guy, like you're saying, who wants to lose weight. Now, what is the deal with the cook dressing like a woman? Like, is that just his character?
Yeah, so Klinger does because the context of the show is that they're all there because they're drafted, right? They're not there because they want to be there. They were all drafted. So Klinger is a character who's trying to find a way to get out without quitting. Like, he's not going to go and say, I quit and leave. He's trying to find a way to get himself discharged. And he's trying to find any technicality, any loophole in the rule book to get himself discharged. And the first thing that he finds is, if you're, and this plays into the whole, like, not necessarily no homosexuals in the military, but things like, you have to stay in uniform, you can't dress, weird and on all these things.
And before Don't Ask, Don't Tell, where...
Exactly. So he, conjures up this idea that if he starts dressing in drag and presents himself in this way, then he can use that as a way to get out. And so, but in the first half of his time on the show, he basically just sits there and dresses up in different women's clothes. So every episode, he's usually wearing like 2 or 3 different outfits, and like you said, it's a full accessorized, it's all nice and pretty, and all these things, and trying to use it. I think his argument at that point is like the insanity plea, like he's trying to claim that he's like insane.
It's like a catch-22 thing.
Exactly.
Yeah,
but,
he's trying to get people to think that he's crazy or gay. Either one will work, but whatever it is that gets him discharged.
Yeah, I wonder, so it does seem like it's in that spirit where it seems relatively innocent, like you're saying, where it doesn't even seem to be like a gays in the military thing. It seems more like he's just a big silly head, he's wearing a dress, like it seems like that's the sort of tone of it.
It's a comical thing, right? And they're not making fun of anybody in particular. I'm a gay and I love his character, so I've never gotten any impression from him.
It's just so interesting. By the time this is airing, like by the time the show is being made, like it's getting pretty close to the point where this would start to be a real issue in the headlines, right? But it seems like at this time, they still just sort of have like a silly kind of cavalier attitude.
Well, I think the whole point of it is that they know that he isn't, like he's doing it so that he can get kicked out.
So the sort of inciting incident for this is going to be that this whole MASH outfit, all like 17 of them or whatever, cannot flip a car, right?
Like an ambulance. An ambulance
a big Jeep
goes
or
around
goes around
a corner and turns over.
Yeah, and so the colonel, who I think of as the guy from Dragnet, right? The white-haired guy, he's the one that's gonna, say like, all right, you guys, this shouldn't be much of an issue for you. And I have to say, at a glance, all of these characters look to me like they're in good shape. They look, maybe some of them are kind of old at this point to be like in the army.
Well, a little gray
all
hair.
17 of them should be able to flip a truck, but apparently not.
So. They weren't trying very hard.
Yeah. And so, I also noticed it's funny that the characterization, again, I'm relatively new to MASH, but it's clear that this doctor character, he is your snooty, he's Alan Rickman in Galaxy Quest. He is your, I'm too good for all this. But so it's funny that they give him, the doctor character, the role of, I don't like exercise and I object to all this,
and he tries to find medical reasoning to like go against it, right? Exactly. Which I'm like, again 1950s, so.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, we need to respect the food pyramid. We need to all eat our bacon and red meat and avoid doing any exercise. And the exercise is their solution. What happens? The other troop shows up.
So the MPs come in, and there's only 4 of them, and they start making fun of all the doctors and nurses that can't flip the ambulance, and they were like, "Do you need our help?" And the MPs are like, "No, we're fine."
No, we got this.
And they flip it over, easy peasy, and the whole troop, the MASH troop, is like, "Oh gosh."
Alan Alda makes a joke. He goes, "Don't you want to warm up by flipping a Jeep first?"
Right, because they're lighter and meant to be rolled over.
Like, afterwards, let's go to the mess tent for some humble pie.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the colonel is like, all right, that's it. Inspired by the Olympics and the fact that Honeycutt and Alan Alda's character Hawkeye are training Ames to lose weight. He says, you guys are going to compete in Olympics since he tells them they have to train the MASH squad, and nobody wants to do it, and the other doctors
like
arguing.
Calisthenics,
right?
And this is where it's straining credulity to me from the get go. Again, I have as much experience with the military as I have with the Olympics, and in fact, I didn't even play an Atari game, so I have less experience. But it seems to me when this guy goes like, "All right, everybody, daily calisthenics," I'm like, I get that these guys are not like infantry soldiers or anything, but don't they have to do exercise anyway? Like, you are in the army. These guys, like I said, look like they're in pretty good shape. Like, they don't have to do a jumping jack once in a while as part of their normal thing.
I mean, it seems like no. It seems like they've got, this is a unit that's based around responding to medical emergencies. So, in their downtime, the ones who want to work out.
Medical professionals are supposed to know that exercise is good for you.
Okay, but you've also had a heavy doctor.
Yeah, and this is the 1950s.
And doctors smoked.
Yeah, and they used to think that, like, for example, exercise would cause a woman's uterus to fall out. So it's safe to say that medical science back then, in terms of exercise, was not exactly accurate.
Yeah, and this is a co-ed troop.
Yeah.
So it starts with calisthenics, but like I said, from before this even started, BJ and Hawkeye have been one-upping each other. They've got a Zack and Slater type relationship with, "Oh, you were head of the varsity team? Well, I had a varsity jacket with 5 letters. Yeah, so that's in the air. The basic calisthenics don't work. So this colonel guy from Dragnet is like, okay, I have an idea. We've all been following the Helsinki Olympics. Why don't we do the MASH Olympics? And that is where I'm like, what the hell kind of army troop is this? Especially when the Olympic Games turn out to be like, get on each other's shoulders like you're teenagers in a swimming pool to do like a chicken fight.
It was the nurses' race. The nurses' race where you had to carry a nurse on your shoulders.
I'm like, there should be some safety considerations here for that.
Yeah, that seemed very dangerous.
The whole thing felt very South Pacific at that point, right?
Yeah.
So they do a thing where they cut in black and white footage of the real Olympics, right? And that almost gives me almost like a Clarissa kind of feel or something. Like, I feel like that's the kind of thing they would do like on a Nickelodeon show or something. You cut in
maybe that's where Nickelodeon got it from.
Yeah, it's sort of setting down that basic like sitcom grammar, like that kind of silliness. So yeah, they cut between this black and white footage of the real Olympics, and then their first event is crutch race, right? You race on crutches, which I have never done personally, but again, definitely the vibe of an office picnic. Something along the lines of a potato sack race or something.
So before we get to the crutch race, though, what I want to say is 2 things. Is that they went straight from the calisthenics to like the next day starting the Olympics, and they placed this bet on the team to win, but they didn't really show like were they training for it, because the whole point of doing this Olympics was supposed to motivate the camp to be more physically active and to do fitness, but like it seems like they just went the next day right into it. Like, was there any, like, I know training montages weren't really a thing back then because Rocky hadn't come out.
And the Olympics is the training. Like, the Olympics is just this fake thing he's come up with to get them to exercise.
Right.
But when they make that bet, that's definitely when I got the Zack and Slater vibe.
Right. And then I love the opening ceremony with the torch, because they had like the little bedpan cauldron, and he lights it.
Yes.
Klinger's like, yay! And then he lights the cauldron, and then he's like, ah! Just freaks out because it's on fire. And like, it's okay.
Yeah.
You were doing it on purpose.
Tracking the trope, the torch is definitely going to be a thing. We're going to get that at least once more.
Yeah.
So the first event is the crutch race, which again looks dangerous as hell. You could tell, like, there are not stunt doubles. There's no CGI fancy editing.
No, they were tripping each other.
They were
with
just
the
like,
crutches.
hey, you actors,
Right.
take these crutches and fall all over the place, and it'll be fun.
My impression of that was just a bona fide hot mess. I mean, it was just a disaster.
I bet it was a really fun day to film because it was like their office picnic. You know what I mean? It was like their field day or sports day.
I bet you they didn't even give him any real instructions. They just said, okay, Houlihan is the one that wins, but everybody else just do whatever and we'll just run the camera and see what happens.
100%. Because all of those people, all of those like nurses and other guys that we never saw or maybe were in the background of other shows sometimes, like they were having a blast. They were doing all sorts of things. This was 100% just like have at it, go for it.
Just go what happens. Yeah.
There's one gag or stunt that is particularly sort of ambitious where one person, like, I think maybe BJ, like sort of like checks or tackles Hawkeye or something, and then his crutch shoots out like a 7-10 split in bowling and like knocks out the doctor guy who's like 10 feet away or something. So I don't know if like they planned that or that was just a funny thing that Hawkeye kind of threw it.
Exactly. Like, is that just something that just happened on accident and they just said, oh shit, like we got that on camera. Let's keep that.
Yeah. I can't imagine they did a lot of takes of these things.
I imagine that the insurance on that episode was kind of high too.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. I feel like you could not do this. If you were filming this now, you don't get Kaylee Cuoco to go up on Jim Parsons' shoulders or something. And, like that's just no way. Speaking of which, that's the second event, the swimming pool chicken fight with no swimming pool, right? Where they just, they have the women get up on the men's shoulders. And again, it looks dangerous as hell.
And then, like, what was it? Hawkeye runs into the tent, and his poor nurse, like, does a face plant on the roof of the tent or something like that.
Yes, I was loving it. There was one extra that, like, hung over backwards on her guy's shoulders, and she's bouncing on his butt. And it was so great.
Yeah, this freaks me out even when people do this with little kids. When I see like a dad with a 3-year-old kid on his shoulder, I'm like, dude, hang on to that kid. Like that's a long way to fall. And so, to see grown-ass people
You're
doing
no
this.
fun.
But that's the second of their, Olympic
Get down
events.
from there. I'm scared for you.
I hasten to add, what is the not nutritional,
what's the
but
physical fitness aspect of this? How are you?
Especially for the woman. Yeah, this isn't getting in shape. I guess for the guy, it's kind of a good workout.
Yeah, but the woman's not getting in shape. She's just riding on the shoulders. Like, unless it's the one that like you said, is like falls back and has to lift herself back up somehow. I mean,
yeah, the sort of finale of this is the obstacle course, and this gives me echoes to a Saved by the Bell episode. I don't know if you remember this, David, but the army recruiter comes to Saved by the Bell, and he makes a little obstacle course for them, and it's a similar thing. And in that one, I feel like Screech has to be the one that represents them or something. It's a similar thing where it's sort of like an underdog thing. In this case,
like there's clearly the underdog, and then clearly the hot jock, and the one that it's the
we haven't mentioned it. This woman character,
Margaret.
Okay, her husband is some other army guy. I don't know. We don't really need to get into it, but he's like some hotshot.
The little side story is that she is going on R&R with her husband, who's also in the army in Korea, and they haven't seen each other in a long time, but they both got their vacation to line up. The prize for winning the Olympics, the MASH Olympics, is 3 extra days of R&R. Yeah. So she has 7 days with her husband in Manila, and this is potentially, if she's on the winning team, will extend it to 10. So she goes from like not wanting to work out, not wanting to do the calisthenics, to like the most intense person. She's like, we gotta win. And
her motivational speech is so epic in that. Goes
exactly. For it. She's like, don't you understand? Don't be losers. Like, she just is so intense. Well, so
whereas like Honeycutt's like, do your best. You got
it. Yay. So she's supposed to ride on Klinger's shoulders in this carry a nurse race. Well, this is when the salami starts repeating on Klinger, right? So he's like, can't do it, need to bow out. So then they suggest that her husband Donald come take take his place, but he is like buff, right? He's like this big,
he is hot.
yeah, broad, like barrel chested, very in shape dude. And the other team is like, no, you can't. And then he goads Hawkeye into letting him be on the team.
Oh, of course you don't want me on your team.
I love how he plays into that ego. Like he knows exactly how to slip his
He's
way
like,
right in.
these guys think they're so smart. Watch out. And he goads Hawkeye, and Hawkeye's like, oh yeah, you think you can beat me? Fine. You're on. You get to be on the team. So he comes in and he's on the team. And then for the last event, of course he wins. And then for the last event, they draw names out of the hat for the last two people that are going to run the obstacle course. And it's Ames, the big guy that they're trying to help get in shape, who's a bit clumsy, and this guy, Donald, the husband, who is buff and whatever. So it's like the tortoise versus the hare in this last obstacle course race.
But he's going to pull a Casey at the bat.
Yeah. He's like, hi, look at me. I'm so hot. I love you, Houlihan. I love you, dear. And
Yeah. He's too busy showboating to, take it seriously. And then, it's still because he is like miles ahead of this, this poor other character who can barely make it through. He's showboating and doing all this silly stuff. And then what does he like? Oh, he misses the finish line or something.
He misses,
spins out.
he misses the
a net.
last tire. Yeah. So even if he didn't fall into the big net thing near the finish line, he missed the last tire, so he was going to lose anyway because he didn't complete
shout
the
out
obstacle
to
course.
reading the IMDb. Shout out to reading the IMDb. Very, very,
and
good.
So he falls into this net mesh thing and he gets all tangled, and then Ames wins, and then Margaret's all angry because she's like, we were going to have more days together.
Yeah, and then it ends with she's not happy about that. He's like, well, it was just a doggone game. We still get our 7 days. And then it ends with all of the doctors, all of the MASH characters, like in the operating room in various states of like, some of them are victims, some of them are tending
they're all
to the
sore.
other ones. They're all moaning and groaning. I wrote down that Hawkeye looks like Hector from Breaking Bad. They're rolling him around in a wheelchair, and he's got a bathrobe on.
That was the bet. The bet was, you have to push me around. If my team wins, you have to push me around in a wheelchair. That was the bet, and that's why they're doing it.
Gotcha. So yeah, look, in terms of tracking the trope, just like I said, you start from the jump with where the Olympics are happening in Helsinki, everything is, that's on our minds. And then, you get all of these lovable goofballs doing silly stuff. Again, I would argue like they should be doing more serious athletic or physical stuff than this every day, just by having any connection to the army whatsoever.
It's just classic sitcom shenanigans, right? Because you're like, okay, for me as a sports professional, I'm like, if I got to whip a MASH unit like that into shape, boot camp style, I'm not going to be putting them on crutches and putting nurses on shoulders. It's going to be
It's going to be basic training again. Yeah,
right. Push-ups and squats and lunges and things, running around the track or whatever.
But in terms of kind of setting this up against the other, we've watched one other Olympics obstacle course episode,
Laverne and Shirley,
and so that was in the same vein where they had the people.
Just in case you don't remember, that was about a ghost.
That's right, it was about a ghost.
Who competed in the Olympics and lost, and the only way to get him to stop haunting them was to recreate the Olympics in her living room so he could win.
It. Last season of Laverne and Shirley, but it was a similar thing where they just turned the cameras on and they were like, run this obstacle course in the studio 3 times and go bananas. And
you're being chased by a ghost.
Right. No, the ghost was cheering him on, right? Because the ghost had Laverne was racing as the ghost because he had
racing by proxy.
Totally bananas. The whole thing was bananas. But in terms of the funny falling down and the pushing each other, I mean, both are on par. They did a great job with the physical comedy. There were a lot more people, obviously, in this MASH episode for all the crazy things. So your eyes could look a million places. And there were the 3 races. Whereas in the Laverne and Shirley, it was just the one like obstacle course, and they did it 3 times, and they had all these slow-mos because they were trying to fill time. This, no filler, like all killer. They were just going for it. They had all these races. It was a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, and what I'll say is, I'm giving them all this shit for choosing these events that are not real sports and all that, but they chose things that they could show. Like they didn't, they didn't bite off more than they could chew. They were able to deliver on the slapstick by choosing events that they're like, we're going to actually do this. Whatever goofy events we come up with, we're going to make the actors actually do it. So in that sense, it makes sense to have goofy things like that.
And I will add, from a sports psychology perspective, in terms of what both the characters within the show, but also the cast of the show could have gained out of this was more cohesion and team group cohesion, right? So it definitely was a bonding experience, I'm sure, and brought the whole group together even further, which, is always a good thing.
Right on. All right. Let's move on to Dharma and Greg.
Season 1, Episode 17, the official Dharma and Greg episode of the 1998 Winter Olympics.
David, you are visibly chomping at the bit to get into Dharma and Greg. So go ahead. I'll let you go first.
Well, first off, I'm very honored that this is the first time we're covering Dharma and Greg on the podcast. And I know Dharma and Greg isn't really the most well-known or even most popular sitcom out there, but when I was growing up, it was actually one of my favorites of that era, for sure. And I actually have, a lot of random memories for it. And it took me the longest time just to find a place where I could actually, rewatch it again now as an older adult. So I really wish it was more available.
Yeah, I think it's just on YouTube, right?
Yeah, that's exactly where I had to watch this episode, was on YouTube, because I couldn't find it anywhere else. So I'm kind of sad that it doesn't quite
which is a bummer. Yeah, the quality is never as good.
Right.
Well, so also, I was also a huge fan of Dharma and Greg back in the day. It's one of those sitcoms that sort of came on there in my senior year of high school. And so I was very busy socially and was not necessarily watching a ton of TV, but I was into it, and I liked how she was quirky, and, I thought this sort of free spirit hippie mixed with the very straight-laced lawyer, conservative dude. I thought that was kind of fun, and the dynamic was interesting. And then that same year, or the next year, Will and Grace came out, and I was like, oh, this is a way better version of this.
Well, okay. Can I interrupt you there and say, it's funny you say that, because I, being a year ahead of you in school, I was already off to college in 1998 when this started, so I had no connection to this whatsoever. I literally didn't have a TV in the dorm room. We talk about this all the time. It's a real sort of dark period in our TV watching. And honestly, my impression of this show is I would just get it confused with Will and Grace. Even understanding, I know Will and Grace, I know what that's about, and Will is gay, and they're not a couple, and that's a whole thing, whereas Dharma and Greg is about a couple. Even still, I would just lump it into my mind as it's a good-looking guy with short brown hair and a girl, and it's a sitcom. I feel like
he does kind of look like Eric McCormick as well.
He kind of looks like him.
That's the thing.
And there's no other hook to it to really distinguish it from that. Yeah. And that's I feel like you're seeing that this is the time when we're in the wake of Friends and even Mad About You, where it's we don't need there to be an alien living in the house anymore. We're done with the crazy high concept sitcoms. We're back to simple, down to earth. It's a couple. It's a group
and it's
of
an
friends.
odd couple.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
That's
but okay.
the thing.
So you guys can explain what the sort of gist of this show is.
And so basically, the basic premise of the show is that in the very first episode, Greg is this high-powered lawyer who comes from a rich conservative family and is on the track towards complete success in the business world and everything that comes along with that kind of aspect, right? But then he meets this very liberal, very hippie type woman on the street one day, I think it's in the subways where they meet in the pilot episode. But she is very free spirited. She's very down to earth. She's very classic hippie type stereotype of a character, complete opposite to what he is. And they meet, just encounter each other randomly, and then go on a date. And then within that first date, they decide to get married. And they just get married. So then the whole show, the premise is that, okay, you've got two completely opposite ends of of a type of person here that got married on their first date, and you know, her parents are free-spirited hippies from the 60s, and his parents are rich, snooty business people and everything like that. So the whole premise of the sitcom is just kind of the weird conflicting cultures of those two, as they also seem to have very strong chemistry with each other, but at the same time have a lot of ideological differences and shenanigans ensue, and there's your show.
Okay, it does seem like the families are a big aspect of this, right? Like his dad and mom are both characters, and then he has a friend whose dad is also a character, right?
Right.
No, that's Dharma's dad.
Yeah.
Oh, that's Dharma's
So both
dad.
both
Bald
sides
guy.
of their parents are major characters. So Dharma's dad and mom, and then Greg's dad and mom. But then they both have friends, at least in the early season. I think they kind of drop, I think, at least one of the friends later on. But in the early seasons, Greg has his own friend, and then who is Pete, I think his name is, and then Dharma has her own friend Jane as well, and they kind of, you know, use that as a way to add a little, you know.
Well, yeah, we're going to see in this episode, it's going to be very much divided on gender lines. You know, I feel like this is something all sitcoms like to do once in a while, at least up to a certain point in time. Let's have an episode where we've got the girls over here, the guys over there. This is what Big Bang Theory did in the comic book episode we were talking about. We're just going to split people up based on gender, and
the girls
you know,
have their story, the guys have their story. There's
Yeah,
a little bit of
competing
overlapping,
A-stories.
but mostly they're separate. And this is where I was like, wow, this show doesn't hold up. Like, I mean, I knew I kind of fell off of it like once I got into Will and Grace, because it was, you know, just much better. And even though the premise is very different, this is an Odd Couple, another version of Odd Couple that kind of only works a little bit. Dharma's whole shtick, it like echoes that preachy, like yoga mom, Instagram influencer kind of like, look at your vagina, know your body. You're not a good person if you don't touch yourself on the daily. But then their whole thing of like, so their impetus for having this like girls moment, right, is that Greg's mom is turning 50. She's freaking out. She's acting like she's dying.
AARP
She's going through menopause.
She got Exactly. She got an AARP membership letter. She's very upset that she's turning 50. She's going to go have all this plastic surgery. She's just denying her
also
age.
super 90s storyline. Should I get plastic surgery?
Right. And so like Dharma and her mom and her friend, their answer is to just be like, isn't your body great? In this like sort of toxic kind of way that we recognize now is very like, your opinions about yourself are wrong.
Right. And they just walk into the house like she's laying there and she doesn't want to see anybody, and the maid comes in and is like, they're here, and she's like, make them
You've got visitors.
Yeah, you know?
Yeah, they're going to do a whole sort of workshop with her. I have to say, you know, we mentioned we had to watch this on YouTube, so the quality isn't great. But this whole storyline makes no sense to me. Maybe it's just that I'm old now, but this woman looks great. Like, this woman just looks way too young to be you know, they're going like, oh, you know, trying to convince her that she doesn't need plastic surgery. Like, women get plastic surgery to look like this woman.
Like, her hair is blonde. I mean, if she's turning 50, she should have at least like some white or something like that. I mean, there's no indication.
Yeah, she's already Michelle Pfeiffer or something.
Yeah, she's already dyeing her hair. She's already fighting age. I think that's what we're supposed to understand. But their whole conversation with her about like being young isn't about being a woman. It's about men. It's about having good sex. It's about, you know what I mean? And it's not really about, and I was like, it was bothering me. What's that test?
The Bechdel test.
Yeah, the Bechdel test. I was like, this is bothering me. Like, if any person, Dharma and her mother, right, should be the ones that are like not worried about the male gaze
like,
and like
what
men
self-empowerment
think about women
and feeling comfortable in your own body and being, you know.
Well,
they are. That's what they say they are, but they're doing it still through that very 90s like male gaze.
Because they dress up as the 3 stages of womanhood, right? Like they have a whole skit where they dress up as different costumes and stuff. So they're kind of coming from all angles. Like part of it is about sex and it's got that sort of Cosmo magazine like feel to it. But then there's other parts of it that
like,
are
what was
about
it, like the wedding or something, the marriage or something like that, and then finally Abby represents like what the change that she's going through now at this point, and she's got like this veil over her head, and It's like she's like a woman in mourning. I don't know what that was.
Yes, she's got this like big old blanket wrapped around her, and she's bent over, and she calls herself the crone. Like I was like, oh, what the hell? So bad. So their solution to all of this is to put on wigs and go to the officers'
and dress
club.
all like hot.
So you want to talk
like,
about
like plastic clothes.
Dress like
trashy
sex workers,
ladies.
basically.
Exactly. And you want to talk about military, like not accurate portrayals of the military. Like, first of all, you can't get into the officers club unless you already are like in the Navy so you can get on the base.
Well, and they had
number
captains
one.
that
So
were like,
how are you getting in there?
They had captains that were like 20 years old.
Exactly. Like none of this is real, but okay, whatever. This is sitcom, suspend disbelief. Yeah. They call it wig night, and they say the best way to feel better about yourself when you're feeling bad is to get all sexed up, put on a wig, fake your name, and go down to the officers club and let these guys hit on you and buy you drinks, because that'll make you feel better. Because once again, self-esteem comes from the male gaze. And I was like, this is so backwards.
And did you notice like who they dressed up as? They were like clearly like very specific archetypes of different types of women.
Yeah, one of them is Marilyn Monroe.
Right. Yes.
One of them is your like typical streetwalker lady with like the short skirt.
She looks like the mom looks like Greg's mom looks like Linda from The Wedding Singer.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So I will admit though I did get a kick out of like Dharma being pregnant during that.
Dharma's pregnant belly.
Right.
And her way of like repelling every man.
Can I buy you a
she
drink?
was like, "Are you my baby's daddy?"
That's what got me in this in the first place. That was hilarious. That was funny.
To your point,
that was good.
The way that that the mom, Kitty, is going to sort of have her spirits lifted is because one of these young naval officers is going to say, "You remind me of my mom." At first, she finds that devastating, but then
so
when it's revealed, yeah, but his mom's only 37.
Yeah,
then
she's
it's
like, he thinks I'm 30.
that's going to make her day. But look, this is all their story. The Olympics aspect of this is going to begin much like our MASH episode with the Olympics on TV. You know, we're going to overhear an announcer on TV at the very beginning of the episode to sort of immediately set the stage of like, okay, everybody, this is going to be our Olympics episode that takes place against the backdrops of the Olympics happening.
And this is an NBC show, and this is the I think the Nagano Olympics, 1998 Winter Olympics. So it's the synergy, corporate synergy.
And the ongoing joke is that they're kind of making fun of the sponsorship aspect of it, because they're always like, oh, the official whatever's in my hand of the 1998 Winter Olympics. So it's like an ongoing gag where they're like, oh, I've got the official takeout dinner of the 1998 Winter Olympics and the official mother of the Winter Olympics. You know, it's just like an ongoing joke that they keep going, which is the name of the episode.
Oh, yeah. The title of the episode is this crazy. Did you say it? Okay. Yeah, that is wild. But in terms of the sponsorship, there's also a running joke about a telephone company commercial that makes all the guys sentimental, that they all like get misty-eyed at.
He plays catch with his dad.
This was a thing. I remember this trend in the 90s of the telephone companies having these
like
really
MCI or something.
I think there were a bunch. I feel like AT&T had one, because remember all of the, before the popularization of cell phones,
right?
All of these companies were competing. They had different collect call plans, different
like minutes at night, where
exactly,
it was like
things
it would
you could purchase,
down.
calling cards, all these different
Very
like
90s.
weird technologies to make long distance phone calls. Yeah, and so they would have these touchy-feely commercials that would really play on your heartstrings.
Like,
and so
you want to get in touch with your kids or your parents.
Yeah, it would it would be a commercial about like a dad calling his son or something, and it would kind of get you in the feels, as the kids say. And so, yeah, that was just like a funny sign of the times. But this whole thing is going to be the guys, right? I guess it's Greg, his friend, and Dharma's dad. Yeah, and his dad.
And eventually, in the
are
end,
all
his
sitting
dad's
around. And it was very funny, again, not knowing any of these characters. The one dad comes in and says, I don't believe in the Olympics. And then Greg's dad says, of course you don't, Finkelstein. No need to explain. I love that line. Like, oh, I'm sure you've got a whole spiel about this. Yeah. And what is his spiel? I don't remember.
He kind of is like, oh, it's about the military-industrial complex. blah, 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 which is an ongoing gag because his character basically says the same excuse for, like, everything that he's against through the whole show. It's always the military-industrial complex and blah, blah, blah. So
he's like a conspiratorial kind of guy?
He's a draft dodger. He was like, his whole thing is he went to Canada. He was like a conscientious objector.
He's a peacenik.
And he just like sees, this is like the idea of now they have like the deep state, right? This was back in the days where it was like the people on the liberal side were like, there are these deep-seated conspiracies.
They're enemy of the state with Will Smith.
Exactly. Like they're trying, they like the FBI killed Martin Luther King and all of that kind of stuff. Like that was it.
They're watching the skating, like I said, on TV. They're talking about fictitious skaters, right? They're going like, who was really good? James Caan in rollerball. Right. And then the other one goes, what about Goofy? Goofy was a good skater. And then
at the Disney on Ice that the guy saw.
I love that one of them makes the same observation about the luge that Seinfeld does. Seinfeld had this whole bit in the 90s about how the luge was the only sporting event that you could do non-voluntarily. Like you could just stick somebody in there against their will and they had just as good a chance of winning as like the trained athlete. And that's what these guys are saying. They say it's a guy jumping in a thing that's going to the finish line with or without him. It's not a sport.
Right. We could bobsled and they have a drinking game, right? So every time they show the torch, the Olympic flame, they take a shot. And so it's like cutting back and forth between these two stories. And eventually we cut back to the guy's story and they are wasted.
They are so drunk.
Yes.
Especially with all the sentimental phone commercials, right? And they get increasingly emotional.
Oh, yeah. Yes. It's a recipe for disaster. But David, do you have a take on this? Is the luge like this whole joke about, you can just stick somebody in there and like all you're doing is falling basically? Like, do you consider it a real sport?
You're just on a slide.
Oh, yeah. It totally is a real sport. I mean, it's I don't know if you remember Cool Runnings, obviously, but one of the most important aspects that Cool Runnings teaches about bobsledding is the start is the key factor, right? Because it's all about how quickly you can push the sled. It's all about the speed and then the quickness that you can jump into it. But you can't just push the sled down because as we see Cool Runnings is a different depiction. In Cool Runnings, the sled breaks and then they crash.
Feel the rhythm.
Right.
Feel the ride.
Get on up. It's bobsled time.
It's bobsled time.
Well, in Cool Runnings, it shows the sled crashing because it's a piece of crap and it breaks apart, right? But in reality, the driver has, the two little pulleys that, he can use to kind of control and steer the sled. But then the guy in the back is the brake guy and has to, be able to maintain the speed, right? So they don't want to go too fast, but they don't want to go too slow because they want to be able to maintain control. So,
because they could fly up off the edge and flip,
exactly,
right?
And that's exactly what happens. That's what in the real Cool Runnings story with the Jamaican team, that's what happens. That they went too fast and they lost control, and that's what caused them to flip. So it's a very cognitive heavy sport because you have to have the fine-tuned control of being able to navigate the course. Plus, you have the teamwork because the driver is not braking. It's the guy in the back that's braking. So you have to have this like kind of inherent bond between them. The two guys in the middle at that point are basically just dead weight. Like they can lean, obviously, and use their body weight to steer the sled. But it's really the communication between the guy in the front and the guy in the back in terms of the braking and the steering to be able to maintain the stability and overall safety of the sled. I mean, now if you take a regular sled and you push it down, it'll probably just, cross the finish line, but it's not going to be because obviously.
You'll go down.
Exactly. It'll go down and it'll make it to the end, hopefully.
So these guys, they're like, how hard can it be? Because they're super drunk. And then Greg's like, oh yeah, what are we going to do? Like get a plane in the middle of the night and go to Tahoe and then just like find a canoe. And they were like, great plan. So off they go. And they're in this bar, like outside the airport in Lake Tahoe.
I love the slow walk that they do. They got like the Olympic theme, and they can play the slow walk.
They do.
And they do it. Maybe this is an Olympics reference, but I took it as a reference to The Right Stuff, the movie about the astronauts where they're all walking
and they're
in a
carrying
line.
their helmets.
Now that's a trope in itself, not just Olympics, but like you said, astronauts. Like it's such a big trope in all these kind of movies.
The like slow-mo walk through the double doors.
The heroes walk,
in
you
your
know, with
outfits.
Yeah, definitely.
Armageddon.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good reference. And 98 is about when Armageddon happened. So yeah, as soon as they start talking about this, the bobsled plan that they have, I am thinking like, all right, what are we going to get in terms of actual slapstick stuff here, right? Because I'm thinking,
are we going to Miley Cyrus like Hannah Montana?
Are they going to pull a Miley Cyrus and have this all happen off camera, or are they going to rise to the challenge like a Perfect Strangers and actually show us
and get in that sleeping bag and wiggle?
Yeah, I feel like they go about halfway, right? We get them going up to
what I love though is that right before they get to that point, at one point during the slow walk, they just stop and they're like, what are we doing? So they actually stop and question it for a second there before they actually do anything.
We're not athletes.
Exactly.
And at the bar, we get a sort of a reprise of that same joke where Greg goes like, oh, so what? I suppose we're just going to grab a canoe, go up to the highest mountain we can find. You know, he just like says a bunch of things and they're all like, sounds like a plan.
Great idea.
And so, yeah, this is going to be not the only canoe action I feel like we're going to get in our episodes today. There's something happens with a canoe later on.
There's a lot of
but
canoes.
These guys get into a canoe at the top of a mountain and I don't know. I feel like we all can kind of see where this is going, right?
Yeah, well, they start talking and they talk themselves out of it, which is a good idea because they're probably going to die.
And then they have like a whole father-son moment there. It gets like really emotional and dramatic and all this bonding happens.
Exactly.
Yeah, we understand this is not a father-son situation where there's maybe been a ton of communication and loving, you know, awareness.
Right, between Greg and his dad. And he's like, why didn't you ever play catch with me? Because they're still pretty drunk at this point, and Greg and his dad are having this whole side conversation, and so then Dharma's dad, who's sitting in the front of the canoe, gets up, goes around to the back, and is like, group hug, because you know you've had this therapy and you're finally getting together. But he was the weight in the front of the canoe, holding it down, and whoop, it goes backwards on the other, like over the other side of the mountain where they just walked up. And he was like, wait for me, guys.
Yes, and we get kind of a callback to, you know, Goofy. I know they were talking about the Disney on Ice thing, but when Goofy would go skiing, you would always get the wide shot of the mountain and hear him going,
cartwheeling down.
Yeah, and so this time we get the you know, canoe / bobsled tumbling down, and the guy goes, Finkelstein, as it's like plummeting down. So yeah, honestly, I like this. Like, to me, it's very sitcom-y, like very, you know, for a late 90s show.
The guy's story was solid. I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's very silly. And even the mom stuff, you know, like we're saying, like this is not exactly the most enlightened storyline, but for a late 90s show, the meanness and like the sort of general shitty attitude was at a minimum. Like it actually seemed to kind of have a heart and like be kind of funny.
And I love that they did the same slow walk with that they did with the men. They did it with the women as well. So when they reveal the women all dressed up in the wigs and stuff, they do the exact same slow walk with the exact same triumphant march and everything like that. So I thought that was like a really great juxtaposition there of both of them kind of doing the same thing, you know?
They both get their heroes walk.
Yeah, and we get, just like we were talking about at the beginning, like the Olympics, it's this thing that's happening in the real world that connects it to sort of to like this topical thing. And then you just get this added, like, we're comparing the characters, all these crazy characters, to this idea we have in our mind of what like a professional bobsledder would be, you know? So it's just, it's this perfect sort of sitcom-y thing.
And that seems to be like a consistent theme in these episodes. It's a consistent theme because it's always like they see the Olympics, they're like, oh, you know, and they want to compare themselves to the Olympics, right? And they think, oh, I could do that. Oh, that's not
it feels attainable.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so now we're going to definitely get a story about somebody inspired specifically by an Olympic situation, the Goldbergs.
Season 3, Episode 16, Eddie the Eagle Edwards.
We've talked about the Goldbergs once before. This is a newer show. Neither of us watched it when it was, you know, sort of in its original cycle, or maybe it even still is. But, you know, we liked it last time.
It just ended.
Yeah.
It just ended.
So what is your familiarity with the Goldbergs, David?
So the Goldbergs was definitely my first, like, pandemic sitcom. So, and I liked the whole kind of premise of it. It looked interesting. I didn't really have much familiarity with it going in. I just saw it on Hulu or whatever, wherever it was. And it's okay, let's just hit that. But yeah, that's basically, and I'm a big fan of George Segal. Because, George Segal, he was also in Just Shoot Me. But I also, some of his like old movies that he did in the 70s, especially, I'm also a fan of. So it was definitely like, okay, he's in that. So I'm definitely going to watch that.
Yeah, and I'll add this to the list of shows that in the 2010s, they always have to start with the monologue. We were talking about that with, I don't even remember which one, but I was saying...
Chris, the Chris
everybody
Rock show,
loves
right? Everybody
Chris.
hates Chris.
Everybody hates Chris, and My Name is Earl.
Well, and even the Wonder
Bernie
Years,
Mac,
right?
Young Sheldon does it as well.
Yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, so this is one of those that everything's going to start with like the old guy looking back on it. And yeah, I definitely, because it is so new, it's got that mark of quality that newer shows have. It's got, good writing and everything. It looks nice. But to me, and I'll mention it as we go through it, there's something that's already a little dated about the sense of humor to me, particularly this teenage son. It's very Napoleon Dynamite to me. It's very like he's gonna be so weird and awkward and dorky, and it's like, it's definitely not totally laughing at him in a mean way like it would be in the 90s. It's much more like humanistic and it does have a heart to it. And yet there's still it's just like a certain brand of weirdness that I'm starting to very much associate with the 2010s and that kind of sense of humor.
So interesting. Okay, so with this show for me, and like, by the way, all the shows that you just listed that have this like monologue thing, the premise for all those shows is that it is a person as an adult retelling stories of their childhood. So that's why you have this narrator character, right? Or this narrator person that's like talking over and kind of setting things up. And so, we just watched Wonder Years for one of our other podcasts. And I think that this relationship between Adam and Barry, the younger brother who is our narrator, and the older brother who is like a little bit deranged in terms of like what he believes about himself, it definitely parallels what you see with Kevin and Wayne, his older brother, in the Wonder Years. And the difference is that Kevin thinks Wayne is an idiot and they most often don't get along, right? Whereas Adam kind of idolizes Barry and they more often than not do get along. And all of the stuff that with Wayne, it was like he's just dumb, he doesn't know what he's doing, he's a total loser. With Barry, we've got it as like he's got a girlfriend, he's got his friends, like he's got a crew of people that kind of thinks he's cool even though he's one of the nerdy kids. And I love that. I think that to me is so spot on, because even if you're, one of the untouchables in school back in the day, you still have your friends. You still have your little crew that you're down with, And so I think that really holds up. I think it gives it a heart that's really nice. The one part that I sort of struggle with is the actor who plays Adam does this thing with his voice, and his voice bothers me. He does this thing, he sort of talks in this weird way.
It definitely fits for him to be the kid version of Patton Oswalt.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess, but he doesn't sound like Patton Oswalt. And I always kind of like bump up against just when he talks out loud, I'm like, he sounds too modern to be a kid in the 80s. And that's where I'm like,
that's funny. And to me, it's the older brother that gets on my nerves more.
Me too.
I remember
me too.
He was less of a presence in the other episode we talked about. This one is
because he was
like
so
all
angry
about him.
they had to he just wasn't speaking in the other episode.
It really, he's where I get that Napoleon Dynamite energy. That just sort of like, he tries so hard and he's so earnest and he's so just sort of over the top.
And he believes in himself.
And and it's fine. Like, I guess all I'm saying is that it basically is the Wonder Years for the 80s. It's doing that same exact thing, and it's trying to sort of get in there before anybody else does in terms of like, we're going to make our sitcom all about the 80s, and so we can have an episode that's about the Breakfast Club. An episode
that
like
was the other episode.
Ghostbusters or whatever. And so I think it's very fun and clever on that way. I guess I just find that like, it's not laugh out loud funny to me in a way that it might have been when if I were watching it in like 2016.
Oh, and I was going to say, like, for me, the characters, it seems like, I mean, I love the show for what it is, but yeah, like you said, I haven't rewatched it, and I haven't even caught up on the last season, because it does get kind of it gets a little exhausting after a while.
I think you're right. I think I didn't actually laugh out loud, but I really enjoyed this. I mean,
it was a fun episode.
Yeah, I enjoyed Barry and his like complete delusion, and I see where you're saying like the delusion is very Napoleon Dynamite, 100%. And so the deal with this episode is that Adam always has built up his brother as being like the best at sports, because he is like Jay, and he's an indoor kid. And so when they
also
play
like
together,
me, he's an older brother.
Right.
Or rather,
Always
Barry is
looking
an
up to the
older
older
brother. Adam is a younger brother.
Adam's the little brother.
Right.
Adam's the little brother who supports
so
his
because Barry is
brother.
the older one, Adam has this sort of myth of him as, the presumption is that he's good at things, and that these things we do inside our house have some legitimacy to them when maybe not.
And I love this, right? Because they're talking about all these games that they like make up in their house. So do you have siblings, David? And did you do this when you were a kid?
Yes and yes. I have one sibling, a sister, who's 4 years older than me. But I also did spend a lot of time with my cousins. In the summers, all of our parents worked. So in the summers when school was out, we would go to my grandma's house and basically just spend all day hanging out at grandma's house. So we would always play random games and do all sorts of crazy stuff like this as well. So this was totally on point with some of the experiences that I had in childhood.
Oh, yeah. Like, I was watching, they had one where they were calling it, like, umbrella racing or whatever, and they were on, like skateboards, and they had umbrellas, or, like, they were in, like, wagons with umbrellas. It was wild. And all I could think of was, like, all the times we were at my grandparents' house, they had this really long dining room, but half of the dining room was, like, a hallway. And so we would get on towels, and we would just, like, drag each other down this hallway that was so long. I mean, so many, like, you want to talk about breaking ankles and slamming into walls. Like these games were the most dangerous games ever.
And what I had, my brother and me, it wasn't so much a game where you like had a winner and a loser.
I know what you're gonna say.
It was called na 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 na, and
they
this
put
is going
their
to be
feet.
Yeah, hang on. I'm going to try to describe
together.
this. It's going to be kind of hard to describe, but it's two people. You lay down on your backs on the floor.
This is what the game
sort of
indoor
like,
kids come up with.
With your feet. You lay down sort of touching at the feet, like a little bit too close together for you to both.
And you push your feet back and
Let me
forth
explain
like a bike.
And so that you're a little bit too close together. Then you both lift your feet up in the air and press your feet you press the bottom of your feet against the bottom of the other guy's feet.
This is not a game!
With both legs in like alternating positions. And then you start going, na 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 na.
Okay, and we need to say that Jay's brother is 6'5".
Wow, but we did this when we were kids.
Me and my sister, we would wrestle and we would fight, but we had an extra element because my mom used to work nights, so she would be sleeping all during the day, right? And she would always sleep in the basement, and of course everything is on top of the basement. And if we woke up mom, she would get real angry. So we would have some of the most epic fights, beat the crap out of each other, play games, do all these things, try to like
just like slap.
And try to
moving your feet at all.
Make it so that like if and whatever we did, just do not wake up mom. And if we did wake up mom, it'd be like, oh, it was her. She's the one that made the noise. No, it was him. He's the one that made the noise.
You're like on the couch, just fighting on the couch so that you don't like hit the floor. I love it.
All right. So this is going to be another very specific point in time for the Olympics. This is going to be the Olympics that featured Eddie the Eagle Edwards. Now, there was a movie about this.
Yeah, Taron Egerton was in it.
Yeah, I remember this coming out in the theaters with Hugh Jackman, but, I didn't see that movie. I wasn't really familiar with this story.
That was a great movie. It's a great movie.
David, is this something you were aware of?
I love that movie. I was like... it was a movie that came out of the theaters. It did not have a big release, so it wasn't like lines of people going out there and watching it. But I was definitely there on opening day because, fun fact is, it actually came out at the same time as another Olympic movie, which was called Race, which was inspired. It's the story of Jesse Owens of the 1936 Olympics. So both movies in the same year in 2016 came out, two different Olympic stories in that aspect. So, and I was there for both because I was like, oh, I love Olympic stories. I love Olympic movies. I want to, and I knew about Jesse Owens, but I didn't really know that much about Eddie Edwards, Eddie the Eagle. And so when that movie came out, I was like, oh, something new. And I watched it, and I was like, oh,
that story is wild.
It's a great story.
Right. So he's this guy. He's a total amateur. Was just like kind of into ski jumping, and they actually have the IOC now has an Eddie the Eagle rule, so that you can't do what he did.
Right.
So in 1988, he basically did the minimum amount that you could do to join the British team to be a ski jumper. He went and he jumped, and they didn't have a lot of people competing in this event. And so he made, the top 3 or the top 5 or whatever it is because they didn't have anybody. In fact, he held the record in Britain ski jumping for his last place finish at the Olympics. He held the record for 13 years, from 1988 until 2000 or 2001 or something. He held the British record for, the longest ski jump at 71 meters.
So fun fact is that he was the first British ski jumper to compete at the Olympics since the 1924 Olympics. So that's how he was able to get in, because Britain just simply did not have ski jumpers at all enter the Olympics from that first Winter Olympics up to that point. And the story goes...
so he's just like...
Oh, yeah. Because what happened was he wanted to be in downhill skiing, right? So the British Olympic team, Team GB, they had a British downhill skiers, but even though he qualified, as they show in the movie, he wasn't really kind of the image that they wanted, so they basically found any excuses to keep him off the team. But he was super, he wanted to be at the Olympics. Like, his goal was to go to the Olympics. He didn't care about the sport. He didn't care about anything. He didn't even care about winning. He just wanted to have the Olympic experience. So then, when they rejected him from the skiing, he was thinking, well, what's the easiest way I could get to the Olympics at this point? And when he realized, ski jumping, all he needed to do was just to qualify the bare minimum, and he got a ticket, right? And that's basically what happened.
Because there weren't other ski jumpers that he was competing
exactly.
with, right?
So his standard broke a British record because there just simply wasn't really a British record.
There wasn't anybody.
So I guess it's that sort of spirit that makes him this perfect inspiration for Barry, right? There's a point where I think it's his girlfriend or someone else in the family is challenging Barry about one of the, about how he's going to make this work, or asking him a question about Eddie the Eagle, and he goes, I don't know all the details. I'm just basing my life on him, which I thought was very funny.
I'm just going to do it.
Which is very on point for his character.
Yeah. And I guess this is also on point for his character. This whole thing starts with him pulling the old wrongly accepting an award at an award ceremony.
Right.
The
Athlete
thing where,
of the year for his school.
Somebody else's name is called and you go up there to accept the award. And I feel like this is maybe one of the things that turned me off to this character from the start, because it's just something like I can relate to being unathletic and weird and goofy and awkward and stuff. But the notion that like somebody else's name is called and you go up and start accepting this award.
Because you didn't even hear it.
Yeah, like I just could not fathom doing that. It just puts him in this whole other level. Just so delusional.
And I mean, there's perceptual focus, but that was just a little too bad, like too much. It's like, that's not just being super focused on thinking you're the best.
Well, it means he's just bought into this notion he has that he's the best so much.
And he's bought in like 150%. Yeah. Well, so Brian Callen, who's a comedian, he plays the coach, and he's just like, what are you doing? Get out of here. I didn't call your name.
Get out. Go put on the costume.
You're the mascot. Like, what are you doing? So up until this point, as the viewer, if like you're new to the show like we are, you don't know that he's not an athlete. So then when you find out this in this moment, it's a fun little reveal. And then the kid who actually wins, turns out that the the creator, like the guy, Adam Goldberg, actually did go to school with this guy who is a real baseball player.
All of this stuff is very autobiographical.
Yeah.
We get the...
Who is a real actual athlete and
we get
became
the
a real
biopic
athlete.
ending where you compare the footage to the real stuff.
The stationary bike where they were each on one of the pedals, like going opposite each other. I was like, whoo, ankle break waiting to happen.
We used to do that as kids all the time as well. We used to do that all the time as well. And it was just as terrifying and dramatic
My
as it
mom
shows
had
in
one of those Nordic tracks,
show.
and we would do it on that. That was like the most fun. We would just be like, I'm on this one, you're on that one.
So, yeah, this guy, Ruben, this other kid, is basically like his arch nemesis, right? This is
Or
the
he's
kid.
just, I mean, I don't know about arch nemesis,
Like in
but
this
he
episode,
is
anyway,
the one that is actually
he's the one who's
athletic.
an actual athlete, and he's the one who accepts the award. At some point, Barry is going to have the idea of, I'm going to make a club that's my game that I made up.
Yeah,
and I'll be the best
I think it was
at
Adam's idea, right? Adam was like, hey, they're kind of pushing you aside from all these other sports. You're like, the water boy on this team, the mascot on that team. You're always like adjacent. Why don't we do something we know you're good at? You're the undefeated champion of this game we made up called Ball.
Yeah, and so he wants to make a club for that. Then this Ruben guy comes and takes over, basically, right? They rename it Ruben Ball.
Right.
And he sort of just loses control of the whole thing.
And he does the walk of shame as he walks out,
We get the whole scene in the hallway with the sarcastic clap where Adam is giving him the slow clap.
They're arguing over what's a sarcastic clap.
Yeah.
And they have a whole argument about it. It's like a whole thing. I'm like, this is going on way
that
too
part
long
was
for...
that part was laugh out funny. Laugh out funny.
Yeah, that was
So
good.
Adam's solution is we're going to have the home games. So this is reminding me of
first,
MASH.
he gets mad at his brother, right?
Yeah.
Right. First, he's like, Barry, this is BS. Like, you're delusional. You've never been good. I've always thought you were good and I always bigged you up, but it's very clear you're bad at this and you're kind of being a jerk because
he's
you're
coming
not...
to terms with how much of a freakazoid his brother
It was
is.
a good reality check, kind of forced him to confront
And
that.
so then his brother, like Barry, just like he takes all of the sports equipment from all over their house, dumps it onto the front lawn.
He's like going to burn it.
And he's like, that's it. I'm done. I'm never, like, my life is over. I'm never doing any of this again. He's very dramatic. And then the sister and the girlfriend go to Adam and they're like, don't you understand? Like, he knew he was never good at sports. He just had to be a hero in your eyes. So again, we're coming back to this, like, Kevin, Arnold, and Wayne relationship where it's like the big brother just really wants to, like, have that, like, oh, look, at least my little brother thinks I'm great.
Yeah, but I would also say, again...
At least somebody likes me.
Yeah.
We also come back to the Napoleon Dynamite thing where you have this guy verging on being mentally challenged at this point, where he has to have his younger brother... And don't get me wrong, like, this is all very cute and nice.
Like, you need validation from your younger brother.
Yeah, so you have to have him invent this whole thing, so that this older teenager can feel better about himself.
Right. So they have the home games.
Yes.
And honestly, like, that's like watching 10 of the 11 seasons of the Goldbergs. That's kind of one of the consistent tropes of Barry as a character, is that he always kind of like has these weird delusions of grandeur that, like, he has to seek external validation from not just his brother, but like from his friends and from, other people that you're just kind of like, after a while, like I watching the show as it went along, I started to kind of get frustrated with Barry. I'm like, okay, dude, like, come on, down. Like, where's your self-image right now? It's you could survive and deal with this, drama or whatever this is, this challenge that you're facing, and just, you're supposed to be the oldest, like, be an adult.
There is something...
It's not that hard to be mature about some of this stuff.
Yeah, it's like there's this grand history in sitcoms and comedy in general of having a character be,
Buffoonie.
Just be dumber or weirder or whatever than anybody would be, and we just kind of accept, like, whatever. It's just like sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, and you can't, there's not necessarily a science to it, but sometimes, that bending of the tone is okay, and then other times you're just like, why would he be this stupid, And I think a lot of times it does come down to the charisma of the performer, and that's where, I don't want to beat up too much on this actor. I don't think he's horrible, but it's just not.
And the actor does great.
Yeah, it's just not something for me where I'm like, I want more of this guy. He just cracks me up just looking at him and listening to him. Like it isn't that. But anyway, we get a sort of like a montage of the home games, basically, right? We get just a little taste of all the crazy stuff that they do.
And it kind of reminds me about like with MASH, right? Like the kind of weird craziness of it. But in this context, it makes a little more sense because like in MASH, we're like, well, with a real military, you can do this. But in this context, it's like, okay, yeah, this is stuff that you would do with your siblings at home. I mean, like you said, we had the scooter or what is it with the umbrella, doing that thing, and then the thing with the pedal bike and. What was it? It's like one of them where they just go sliding down the stairs.
Yes, it was what do they call it? The stair luge. And they've packed themselves inside a sleeping bag with just like tons of pillows around them. And they threw themselves down the stairs feet first, like thunking down. Watching that, I was like, I want to do that.
And what's hilarious is that there's actually the home video that they show at the end of it of them actually doing
Which was just the greatest part of this episode. So the last few scenes it's a split screen. And it's the scene of the actors shooting the home games montage, and it is a shot-by-shot recreation of Adam's home movies from when he was a kid. And it is so funny watching the two of them side by side. Like, they got it. They had the clothes the same. They were, like, on the pedal bike, and they had them falling off at exactly the same beat. I mean, they just did a great job with that.
Yeah, it really is like the end of a movie where they're like, and here's the real Oscar Schindler. But instead, it's like, here's the real sled race.
Thankfully, a little more optimistic than Schindler's stuff. So, much different.
There's a little button on the end where they're playing a new game called Can You Feel That? Where they're smacking the kid in the sleeping bag. And that was just like a game that I had with my friends at my friends' sleepovers called The Worm, where we would get this one guy would go into the sleeping bag and we would be fully zipped up and he would be just like wriggling around on the floor and we would just pummel him.
Holy claustrophobia.
Yeah, we would just pummel him.
Holy claustrophobia.
With pillows and stuff.
We used to play The Worm at my sleepovers too, but it was a different kind of worm.
Yeah. So, that tickled me. But again, like, no pun intended. Again, that same thing of like the Olympics are going on, right? And this thing that we saw in the Olympics gave us this idea for the wacky version of it that we're going to do on our show.
Well, and the inspiration is that Barry, seeing Eddie the Eagle, was thinking, oh, if Eddie can get to the Olympics, then I can get to the Olympics. So that was the whole point of him doing all this athletic stuff in the first place, was thinking, oh, I don't have to be the best to be at the Olympics. I could just do the bare minimum and get there and have my Olympic moment as well. So that was his whole inspiration and the whole driven of the whole Eddie the Eagle's story into this whole narrative.
Yeah. And so far, I feel like getting into the canoe has been the closest thing to actually doing like the same event that they actually do. Like they always have to transpose it into their weird like homemade version of it. But okay, let's finish it off with Superstore.
Superstore, Season 2, Episode kind of 0, but if you're looking for it on streaming, it's Episode 1, Olympics.
So this one begins in media res, as we like to say. We've got the procession already starting, right? The cold open of the show.
This was a great cold open.
Oh, yeah. This has got to be one of the highest rated episodes of Superstore because there were so many pieces in this that I remember being like plot points later on. And I'm like, whoa. So
I guess they've like divided them into different countries based on like their nationalities or whatever other things.
I think it was I thought it was by department.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because they were all carrying American flags.
Yeah, we're going to get into all the crazy...
but it was like electronics and pharmacy and clothes.
Yeah, we're going to have a lot of weird ideas about nationalities and stuff explored in this, but then we're going to get a sort of devolution into crazy slapstick stuff because the oldest living employee of Cloud9, this big box store, she's going to be carrying the torch, and then she's going to set Myrtle is going to set the pyramid of toilet paper things on fire
instead of
that's the Olympic cauldron,
instead of the actual Olympic cauldron that was ready for her, she walked over to the pyramid of toilet paper and set that on fire.
Just as a sort of contrast to MASH, we were talking about, when you were filming a TV show back in the 70s, wasn't that much safety standards. Just like, hey, Alan Alda, just flip over on crutches and hope for the best. Now here, I'm going to say this cold open, the humor of it is dampened for me by all of this CGI fire. Like there's a certain, I'm sure they maybe lit a few toilet paper rolls on fire. To me, there's a certain fakiness to this whole sequence that kind of it gave it a little bit of like a Hannah Montana kind of feel.
Well, I think this might just be your like trained eye.
Maybe it is. I'm just used to
I didn't notice that it was
stuff.
CGI fire so much. But it's really funny. She lights this like tower of toilet paper on fire, and then the manager guy, he comes over and tries to put it out with a fire extinguisher, but it just kind of blows the tower over. So then you have like rolling, flaming rolls of toilet paper that are spreading over into the charcoal and the lighter fluid display. And so that all goes up in flames. And so like the whole opening ceremonies devolves into madness because they're all running because there's all this stuff burning, and they have this mannequin, and the mannequin is like half burned, and then we see that later on. And so there's all sorts of fun stuff.
Well, and what I love about this, especially in juxtaposition to the cauldron scene in MASH, right? Because in the cauldron scene, Klinger lights the cauldron, and then when it lights up, Klinger's like, and panics, right? But in this scene, when the toilet paper gets on fire, then the whole store goes up in flames, and everybody in the background is just running around panicking. But there's like these random little bits of like people being calm. So there's like a customer that walks up and she's like, I want to return this because of whatever. And she's just unaware that this whole building is up in flames right now, but they're just like acting like as if nothing's wrong. So it was such a hilarious juxtaposition just when I watched those 2 episodes. But it was just like, I really love those kind of like little gags of just people in the background running. She's like, I want to return this because, because it feels like something that would actually happen in real life.
And the one guy is like, do you have a receipt? Great, thanks. Takes the receipt and like wheels away from her. So I don't think that we've covered this on the podcast before either. This is a brand new show to the podcast too. And this is one that this is one of my go-to plain watching shows. So I've watched a bunch of them. I enjoy this show. The premise of this show is they all work in this big box store like a Costco or a Sam's or a BJ's or whatever. And it is very Walmart coded. Yes. So they have like the blue vests and like they have the name Walmart, tags that have Walmart, the like white in the middle and like the yellow on the one side and red or blue on the other side. Right.
Yeah, just like the movie 1 Hour Photo with Robin Williams, another fake Walmart movie.
And so you have America Ferrera, and this is the show that she did right after Ugly Betty. And she is, she's a little bit older. She's a mom in this, and she is like the sane one, kind of in quotes, who works at this big box store. And then there's this crazy cast of characters around her. And her name is Amy. She plays Amy in the show, but the shtick with her is that she never wears the name tag that has her name. So in this episode, she's wearing a Gemma name tag. And then you've got Jonah, who is the like good looking guy that
he's the lawyer from Silicon Valley. Very small part in that show, but I always found him very funny.
Yeah. So those are kind of like the sort of solid, kind of most normal, in quotes, characters, and then you've got this crazy cast of characters around them. Well, so this episode is actually like out of continuity order because the girl who's like the teenager girl who's Cheyenne. Pregnant is this, Cheyenne. She had already given birth at the end of season 1, but this episode is in the summer.
That's why it's number 0.
Right.
So she gives birth and then she's pregnant again and then she's not.
Exactly. So this was like an episode that they filmed to air during the Olympics, and it doesn't follow continuity. So it's like this out of order thing, right? So then the other piece, and this lines up with the actual Rio Olympics, the 2016 Summer Olympics. This is why they're doing all of this. The like NBC tie-in and the in-store promotions and all that stuff. And then the other thing that happens in this episode that is this plot point that kind of falls off, like comes on later on in a bigger deal, but we get the beginning of it here, is the Asian guy, the Filipino guy, finds out, Mateo finds out that he's an illegal immigrant.
He got his green card from the green card store.
Right, that was like a
it's
fake
not
green card
until
store.
he hears himself explaining that.
Yeah.
Yeah, the same place you got knockoff handbags.
And I love how he's like trying to explain it, and then he's like, then he calls his grandma, and he's like, "Grandma, like, is this how it?"
Is this what happened?
Yeah. A couple observations about this show. As somebody dropping into this for a podcast who's not familiar with who all these people are, I love the name tags. Can more shows do this, please? My God, to have every character just wearing a name tag.
Oh my gosh, it was so useful for me too, because I've not seen this show before. My own history with it is I watched the pilot and I didn't really get into it. So this was literally, other than the pilot, the only episode I've actually seen of it.
Yeah.
And it was so helpful to keep track of everybody. But I forgot about the gag with Amy wearing a name tag of a different name, because then I was like, who the hell is Gemma? That's not listed on the IMDb credits.
Nobody's telling her that.
And then and I was like, I'm pretty sure that's Amy's character, but then I was like, oh yeah, I remembered the gag, but it definitely helped out a lot having those name tags there.
Yeah, really. And the other thing about this is just, this is coming at a time when you're getting shows that are not making any secret about being kind of inspired by The Office, right?
Sure.
Just like you had Parks and Rec and shows like that. And for me, this Glenn character, the manager, played by Mark McKinney, he is just so Michael Scott-esque.
Oh, he's so cringy.
And he's almost more David Brent-esque, maybe. He's going back to the original sort of Office. The whole sort of misguided attitude about ethnicity and everything, and just like the whole thing of everybody come into the conference room and I'm going to pontificate and talk about things that I don't know anything about and say things that are politically incorrect and make people uncomfortable. Like it's funny. My note
with like the good intentions of like trying to motivate people, right? So he's not doing it to be mean. He's like thinking, oh, this is inspirational, and
it's
like,
just very ignorant and socially stupid and everything. And I wrote at the top of the page here, bit of a wannabe Michael Scott vibe from Glenn. And then by the time you get like to the bottom of the page, I'm just like, oh, this could not be more Michael Scott.
Yeah, he does a really good job with it. And then they have the assistant manager character who's kind of just like this hard ass. She just gets shit done, and she can't stand his shenanigans. And so we're already kind of by the end of season 1, like at the beginning of season 1, she was a little bit more like a Dwight. She was like, oh, we respect the rules. He's the boss. We try to like do everything he says. And then as season 1 goes on, she's like, he's a fucking idiot. I should be running this place. And so she like actively is insubordinate to him and is always like, so the setup for this one is that she's like, well, your opening ceremony sucked. I'm going to do the closing ceremonies.
Now let's back up and say, again, because we started en media res, we didn't get to see the usual thing of, hey, everybody, let's have the Olympics. You know? So why are they doing this? What is like the premise
in-store
for
promotion?
This? Okay, this is just
It's
Olympics time, so we're gonna have the Olympics.
Let's do stuff to celebrate the Olympics and use it as an excuse to sell stuff.
Okay, and part of this is going to be young Cecily Strong making a guest appearance as Missy the Olympic, a figure skater, some sort of
I think gymnast. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
but
she's
did
making
you
a
catch
store
all the other
appearance.
cameos? So there were 3
was,
cameos. I caught 2 of them.
Cameos. Who did you catch?
So I caught Tara Lipinski. Mm-hmm. So they like spilled water on the ground, and Tara Lipinski was an ice skater, an Olympic ice skater, and she is a commentator now at the Olympics. She is hilarious. And Michaela Maroney, the one who does like the side face, like the, like, oh, I don't care about this. She became a meme. She was a gymnast and she got a gold medal, and she kind of had this like sideways smirk, like, tell me something about it.
It was a silver medal. It was a silver medal.
So I caught those 2. The one that I didn't catch because I was too busy having a visceral reaction to this moment, because this happens to me every time I go to our grocery store down the street, was Apollo Ono, who's a speed skater. So I didn't catch him. Did you catch him?
Yeah, his was at the very beginning, like closer to the beginning, after the cold open, but kind of like during a lot of the chaos. There's this like scene where like an old lady, like the shopping cart kind of blocks the aisle as he's trying to move through it, so he kind of gets trapped.
Over again.
Yeah. So which is ironic because as a speed skater, he's supposed to be like used to go and he keeps getting blocked by this, so that's kind of the gag
cart.
there.
This old lady in a cart.
I wanted to add that Tara Lipinski, her cameo is that she slips and falls on the puddle, but then she does like a twist spin around thing that's kind of like an ice skating thing, and then gets back up and keeps going. And then Michaela Maroney, she does like she's trying on a jacket. And she's in the mirror, and she looks at herself in the mirror with the jacket on, and she kind of does the not-impressed face. She's like, and then she's like, I don't like the jacket, and takes it off. So those kind of like the fun little cameos of kind of playing on the sports and then the personality aspects of the athletes that appeared. I thought that was really, really kind of fun because like they had no actual plot in the show. They were just customers at the store.
Yeah.
And it just
they
was
were
like
just
kind
little
of like
cutaway
a blink and you miss a
scenes,
moment.
like moments between the action. And I was like, hey, that's Tara Lipinski. Oh, that's Michaela.
Yes, and I was blissfully ignorant about all of this happening.
As per usual.
Did not recognize any of these people. Cecily Strong does this sort of like what we call
she's like the Mary Lou
now.
Retton.
Yeah, she has a little index card with the word Olympics written on it. And and she shows it to America Ferrera's character. She goes, this looks like a stupid person wrote it, doesn't it? But it's actually something I wrote when I was a little girl.
And Cheyenne, she shows Cheyenne this thing as well.
Yes.
And so this kicks off this whole thing of Cheyenne being like, I used to be a gymnast before I was a pregnant teenager. So all I have to do is write it down on a card and I can do it. And so I'm going to be an Olympic gymnast.
Well, and it's the same theme like Amy gets inspired by Missy's card thing and tries to use that as a way to like inspire from that Olympic aspect, trying to inspire everybody else. So she does the whole card thing with the rest of the staff. And then, it adds when it goes into Cheyenne's story of saying, well, Cheyenne's like, well, because Cheyenne's thinking, oh, what am I think she overhears a conversation between Amy and Missy. And she's like, well, what the hell am I doing with my life? And she's, pregnant. And so that's what inspires her thinking like, oh yeah, I used to be a gymnast. I want to be at Olympics and trying to, so they all become kind of inspired through this Olympic story as well, which is, kind of on point with, all the other aspects of the shows that we've discussed.
Cheyenne gathers everybody around her jewelry counter because she works at the makeup and jewelry counter, and she gathers all these other characters around, like all these other employees, and she's just like, all you have to do is write it on the card and then it'll come true. And then so they've got things written on there like eat lobster, and Amy's like, you could actually do that, because they were all like crazy. And then the lady's like, oh no, I'm allergic to lobster, I'll die. And she's like, why would you write that on your card?
Some of the other dreams that people have written on their cards are go to Mars, nail Scarlett Johansson, and be Beyonce. And so, Jonah and Amy are the ones trying to be level-headed and trying to get everyone to understand, like, what manifesting really is like your dreams need to be plausible and, trying to talk people down.
Like, set realistic goals,
Yeah, Amy tells the guy who had written on his card, want to go to Mars or whatever. She was like, why don't you just change it to, like, go to Disneyland? And he's like, do you know how expensive that is? And she was like, Mars is... Never mind.
Yes, he doesn't, which is a real psychological phenomena. I think people have an easier time latching onto something that's completely fantastical versus something that's only...
Like winning the lottery.
Yeah,
something that's easier to realize, like, oh, that's not going to happen. So, as opposed to like, well, that could have happened. But
yeah, exactly. But this episode, this has the structure of a lot of the newer shows do, where it's not a simple A story, B story, C story. There's a bunch of crazy crap going on. This is, a very sort of robust cast, and so there's all kinds of different storylines. We've got throughout all of this the Mark McKinney Glenn character having this weird sort of jingoistic thing where he thinks America's the best.
Yes.
And, there's one point where Jonah is trying to get him to take it easy because, of course, on the other side of things, Mateo is finding out that he's not a citizen and doesn't know what he's going to do about that. And
and Mateo was wearing a Filipino, a Filipino flag, and was like, but I'm also Filipino, so I will, the Olympics is all about supporting your country. Both of your countries, you can support both. And Glenn, he's so confused. His whole character is just like, that does not compute.
No, America's the best.
He's like, but don't you understand? And then they're like, but people who live in other countries, they think their country is the best. And he's like, but
Their
we're the
country is the
first.
best.
He has a truly unexamined sense
we're
of
American.
national pride. And yeah, there's a point where he's talking to Jonah and he says, no, but the Olympics are all about competing and proving that you're the best. And Jonah goes, yeah, but they're also about coming together. That's what the interlocking rings are for. And Glenn goes, oh, I thought it was just a symbol. I didn't realize it symbolized something. I thought that was funny. Again,
That
very
was such a
Michael,
great part, yeah.
Yeah, very Michael Scott move to have this little conference room thing where he goes, I brought in egg rolls from the Orient, pizza from Italy. You know, he's trying to show how multicultural he is, and he's saying...
Oh, I'm
that
culturally
it's offensive.
diverse.
Yeah, he's not using the right nomenclature. He doesn't understand anything about the actual cultures. So yeah, just lots of like miscellaneous stuff happening sort of all over the place. And sort of all the while, this assistant manager character that you're talking about, the woman, is like, I am taking charge of the closing ceremony. It's not going to be a fiasco like the opening ceremony was. I feel like this is another sort of sitcom trope. This is something that maybe Dwight would want in The Office. There's going to be a helicopter, you know, spectacle.
Or Andy, yeah.
Yeah, there's all kinds of like crazy over the top stuff. And so we expect that that's not going to work out.
They have dancers
and it's also
and
kind of like a
sparklers everywhere.
Well, and it kind of plays up like the rivalry, right? It's kind of like Honeycutt's, BJ's, and Hawkeye's rivalry, and you know, all these different kind of rivalries that play up between these characters. Like, she's like, okay, you did this and it was horrible. I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it better.
Yeah, and meanwhile, Cheyenne, I thought was similar to Barry. You know, like she's got the same sort of like how can we get her to get?
She's optimistic, but
Daffy energy.
Yeah, how can we get her to understand that like what she's saying is like not possible? Let's see. Glenn doesn't understand when Mateo tries to tell him that he's not a citizen. He's going like, but you are. We're all Americans right now.
He hears Jonah enough, right? So Glenn like hears Jonah enough to recognize that he was sort of like accidentally putting Mateo down by being like, but America's number one. So when like Mateo goes to tell him like he's found out that he's not a citizen, he's like, no, we're all American here, you know, like still just doesn't get it.
Yeah, and he goes, and you know what? I'm Filipino, so why don't we trade pins and we can each put each other's pin on? And so he puts on the little pin, like slaps it on, and then he's just kind of like holding this weird face, and Mateo's like, you pricked yourself with the pin, right? And he's like, don't get any help, just stay here with me.
No, he said to the bone.
Yeah,
which I was like, okay, there's no way, but okay.
Yeah, well, and I was like, there's no bone in that area of the body.
I know.
Like it's all muscle. And it's...
Well, but Glenn wouldn't know that. Glenn wouldn't understand the anatomical accuracies of what he's saying. And it ends with a giant
I was
helicopter
almost expecting
stunt.
like a little pool of blood you know.
Yeah.
Yes, I was too.
We get Rock Me Like a Hurricane, right?
Yep.
As they're all leaving for the day. Rock Me Like a Hurricane is playing. And
this like Kiss, like these people who are dressed like Kiss, they come out and they're doing the dancing and there's like, they've got
and the
fireworks going off.
And then this helicopter comes in, just like swoops in there. Last minute.
And she's really on
and
it.
she's hanging from a ladder that's like hanging from the helicopter, and she's got a megaphone, and she's like, "Suck it, Glenn! Helicopter, yeah!"
Yeah. So, it's a pretty crazy ending, but yeah, this one again, this isn't like a story that's going to have a resolution. It's more like a lot like The Office. It's like a bunch of things that happened on this day, right? It's just like, you know, we went to work at this
kind of
crazy
random
place.
Shenanigans, you know?
Yeah, a day in our life, and here's a bunch of crazy stuff that happened that has to do with the Olympics.
But I think that both of these last two episodes, the Goldbergs and Superstore, give us an opportunity to kind of poke into your brain, David, about the psychology around the, you know, motivational aspect and like setting dreams and setting goals, because that's really what the Superstore episode is about. And then also the sort of like delusions of grandeur and like, you know, though, like, where is there's definitely an intersection between those two, right? Like in order to be a Missy, you probably started as a Cheyenne or a Barry.
Right, and exactly, one of the things I was thinking about when I was watching these episodes. So going back to the Goldbergs, for example, it was, Barry had this kind of inflated sense of self given to him by his not only personality, but also his brother by saying, oh, your brother is always being so positively encouraging and always looking up to him and stuff. So he kind of feels this good. But the fact that he's never actually competed in real sports in school or whatever, he's never compared himself to other actual athletes. He's always compared himself to himself. So of course he has this artificially inflated sense of ego that he thinks, oh, I'm a great athlete, I'm all these great things. And then, of course, I imagine, in high school, probably one of those cringy things that you look back upon, and you're thinking, why the hell did I do that? He thinks, oh, I'm going to be the best athlete in the world. So when they call it up, goes out there. But it's like they have no idea he's an athlete because he's never actually competed in any sports that the coach, the PE teacher, or anybody else would actually do. They just know him as the school mascot. So he's like, shut up, Barry, get into the costume and let a real athlete
mascots, you have to have a lot of athletic ability to wear those crazy
Oh,
costumes.
yeah.
Though.
Oh, yeah. I used to work at an amusement park, and I did not do the costume characters except for one day I did it. And those things get sweaty and intense. So I definitely know how that feels. Yeah. So that's a whole nother podcast.
Do you have people in your work? Do you have people that have unrealistic goals or like images of themselves? And how do you deal with that?
Exactly. And you see this especially at that age, around the same age that Barry and Adam are, because a lot of them think, oh, they're going to be the next Cristiano Ronaldo. They're going to be the next Michael Jordan. They're going to be the next Wayne Gretzky. And they have these like, but it's not just the kids themselves. It's oftentimes like the parents and even like the clubs, right? And you see this on social media all the time where you see like a video of some kid, maybe who's like 10 years old or 8 years old or like really young that are doing amazing athletic things. They could see the little kid that's like super skilled in terms of whatever, fighting that he's trying to do, right? And everybody thinks, oh, this is going to be the next Olympic champion. This can be the next Michael Phelps. This can be the next superstar. So already there's all this pressure putting onto these kids that this is what they're going to be. But it's like you're seeing them at such a young phase of their life that there's so much that could, completely derail
so many
that.
Directions they could go.
So many. Exactly, and so a lot of times they get this, but then they, start to realize, especially when they actually are more actively participating, as we see with Barry, when he gets compared to an actual athlete that's actually like somewhat good, it's like a reality check that just kind of, punches you in the side and you're like, oh, crap, maybe, I'm not as good, right? And a lot of the times, the type of reaction that Barry has is actually very common in that, where they realize they start to question everything about themselves, and their self-esteem drops and, they kind of hit this depression.
Have a bonfire.
Exactly. And they're willing to like give it all up, right? Because now he's having an identity crisis. 'Cause this is always who he's seen himself, but now he's not that. So now he's thinking, okay, I need to get rid of all this because it's all fake. It's all, whatever. So, and they can be very dramatic about this stuff. So it is very common to see that. So, even though we kind of like are criticizing Barry here as a character of just like, okay, he's kind of getting annoying with this, it's actually pretty realistic in terms of the way that he's reacting to a lot of this, and you think, oh, it's just a character trope or whatever, but it's like, no, there's actually kids out there that have the exact same kind of reaction, and, thankfully, hopefully they have some kind of support to say, well, yeah, you may not be as good as you thought you were, but that doesn't mean you're bad either. I mean,
right. Ease them into some sense of realism.
The Missy character to me really was emblematic of like, as a child, I had a goal and I had these parents who really pushed me to that. And now I'm 40 something and I achieved my goal when I was 14 years old or 16 years old. And I'm just still talking about that. I've done nothing since then. I'm writing books about the goal that I set when I was, in third grade and achieved when I was in 11th grade. And it's been, 30 years and I'm still stuck in that.
Right, because like what has she done since then, right? Exactly. It's all been related back to, kind of like the whole, with Al Bundy, oh, well, I once, scored 4 touchdowns in a single game, kind of thing like that. It's like, okay, that was back then.
Ruined
what
my
have you
life.
done since then?
Yeah,
exactly,
also,
and stuff.
it's kind of spoofing this self-help sort of a masterclass attitude where it's like, in the 21st century, it has become this very commercialized thing, and look, don't get me wrong, as somebody that, constantly listening to podcasts and stuff, I love listening to successful people share their habits and ideas and stuff, but I always have to remind myself to take it with a grain of salt, because there is this survivor's bias where the person who finally did make it through and make it to the Olympics, they can say, oh, well, let me go back and tell you how I did it. But the truth is that part of how they did it is they're just really good. And they, it's
lucky too,
Yeah, and there's not stuff that can be shared.
And there's a lot of toxic positivity behind it as well.
Yeah.
Because you think there's a lot of these empty, supposedly inspirational messages. And you see this all the time on social media with these, what we call fitspiration, right? Where you show some fit-looking person with some, empty message of, well, a dream is just a goal that you haven't written down yet or something like that, and it always shows like somebody with a hot body and you think, okay, and you're like, what does that even mean? Like, I don't even know what the hell you're saying, and kind of like how it's shown in Superstore.
No days off.
Right, exactly. And it's like, oh, feel the no pain, no gain or something like that. And it's kind of like how it's shown in Superstore when she tries to explain it, but nobody really understands the concept of it. That's like you said, a great parody of kind of how this toxic positivity is so prevalent in society, especially when it comes to things like sport or fitness. Because, like, for me, I always saw sports, arts, athletics, all these different things, music, as a way for people to express the best of who they are. But it has to be, like you said, something that you're passionate about, something that you love to do, something that you're naturally drawn to. You're not doing it for Olympic glory. You're not doing it for these extrinsic, external, motivational rewards. You're doing it because you love to do it. And even if there was no reward at all, there was no medals, no, money, no sponsorships, no glory at all whatsoever, you would still do it. And that's really where it, in the end, it is where it counts.
Yeah, well, that's really well said. I feel like that's how I feel about the art and stuff that I do. And, we have, in various ways, all of these characters across all of these shows sort of failing to understand.
Yeah,
so,
exactly. They're really, like, failing to kind of see what the Olympics really are about.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's fun though because of Schadenfreude, right? Like it definitely these are good. This is a good trope. Number one for corporate synergy, but number two for all of us viewers who most of us are not, Olympic athletes or at the top of whatever it is that we're doing. And so it's nice to kind of watch somebody really strive and then fail, but still be okay and still have people around them that love them.
We could relate, right? We can relate, and it helps us to realize, you know what?
I'm a loser too.
Exactly, right for the losers.
You think about it, it's sort of, it connects the different angles on the trope. On the one hand, you have, like I keep saying, the Olympics are on. Like, it's something that's happening in the real world, so it's an easy
and
way
everybody's inspired by it. I mean, who hasn't been inspired by the Olympics in some way?
They're inspired by it, but they're also, at the end of the day, I think people relate more to the goofy sitcom characters than they do to the real life athletes that actually do train for 20 years. So, there's lots of fun overlap here. I mean, all the stuff that we're talking about, the delusions, the tying it into the different periods in history. David, what do you think? Any sort of like MVP or any sort of final overall thoughts?
I mean, I would like to definitely give an MVP to the cast of MASH for actually just surviving the production of that episode, because those were some really wild stunts that, like you said, just get the camera rolling and whatever happens, just keep rolling. But, it's like, okay, well, it seemed like, by the end of it, there was a minimal visible damage, or maybe they did the operating room scene at the end to cover up all the scars and bruises and stuff.
Maybe some of them were actually being operated on.
Exactly, and I was like, okay, this gets a little more realistic here and everything like that. But what I really loved was that, like we were talking about in terms of just kind of that like down to earth realization that most of us are definitely not going to be Olympic athletes, but it's also kind of a lot of ways help to encourage these people to kind of face a reality, right? In a lot of ways, as we saw with Dharma and Greg, ultimately it led to Greg confronting his father about some long-standing daddy issues that he had, and finally allowing them to kind of have an emotional bonding moment, which, of course was ruined when they went sliding down the mountain, but, it's still,
maybe it strengthened their relationship.
I was going to say, the trauma strengthened their relationship.
Right, exactly. And then the same thing with, with Barry and Adam in the Goldbergs, right? Because it kind of forced them to have a very honest and frank discussion with each other, which still allowed them to maintain that, yes, Adam really does look up to his older brother, but at the same time, like, okay, older brother, you need to calm down in terms of how great you think you are compared to everybody else in the world.
Yeah, they definitely grew up a little together in that moment.
Exactly, and that's what I really liked about it, because, again, when I was talking about, like, in the beginning, the Olympics is about how do you bring people together? How do you find that common ground that really helps to bridge these gaps that separate us and bring us, closer together. And I mentioned with team cohesion with the group in MASH, not only for the characters within the MASH unit itself, but the actual cast of just surviving the filming of that episode, right? And same thing with the Superstore episode, in terms of just the way that they were able to connect with each other. And, there's a bit of a reality check there, but it helps the people to be more honest with themselves, which I think is really very important because, to be honest, I think we could all be more honest with ourselves in a lot of ways. And so if this is the kind of platform that brings it out of people, then I'm all for it.
So I really enjoyed this set of episodes as a whole, like as a lineup. I feel like it was really fun to start. And the first three all have actual competition events, right? I guess Dharma and Greg isn't really a competition, but like they all have, they kind of all have like an action, right? And especially the Goldbergs and MASH, both of those are really nice. I think they're a good pair of the slapstick and the going for it, and the one you've got
the physical comedy.
The physical comedy, they're doing the actual events. I really enjoyed those for that. And then I think the Dharma and Greg and the Superstore episodes kind of tackle it more from this human aspect, right? Where you're trying to like be realistic about who you are and your goals and your past and what you are like. And I think even the lady's story in the Dharma and Greg episode falls in line with that, right? It's like getting a realistic image of yourself as you're aging, and what are you, what do you like about yourself? What are your limitations? What do you want to do? And just, I think that even lines up with the lessons learned I feel like we were doing as we were going through this, through these series of episodes. So yeah, I mean, Superstore is always fun to watch. That one to me is laugh out loud funny in many ways. I think this episode of the Goldbergs wasn't as good as the other episode we watched. So I was like, all right, I've seen it be great. I've seen it be okay. But I think the Superstore and MASH were the most fun for those two reasons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. This was a very fun lineup. Nice little sprinkling throughout time. It's funny how we almost sort of skipped over the 80s, but then the Goldbergs kind of gives us the 80s by taking place there. Yeah. The MASH one I really liked for the reasons we keep saying, that just that realism to it and the way you got to see the actors really messing around. And I think for me, I don't know if it's necessarily the best, but the most sort of pleasant surprise was Dharma and Greg. You
didn't know it.
Yeah, to have
and it's a Chuck Lorre, so you had an idea about what it was going to be going.
It's 1998, and so to have it actually be like kind of fun and have it be very sitcom-y in a way that I find appealing. Like I would not want for every episode to be let's split up the men and the women,
right.
But to have that sort of classical boys versus girls kind of thing and give them their own silly storyline, and to have it culminate with them sort of like precariously on top of the mountain with their silly, maybe not quite perfect strangers level slapstick, but I like the thing with them in the canoe. So that one was maybe the most sort of unexpectedly fun for me. But yeah, these were all really fun. Again, like it was really interesting to see the different angles on it. Well, David, this was great. Thank you so much. This was a really interesting conversation.
Yeah,
and
thank you.
You definitely, we would not have had
fabulous. It was a lot of fun.
any of this knowledge of the Olympics and of athletics. So is there a website, a social media thing, anything you want to sort of drive people to or make people aware of?
Yeah, so my website is Stonewall Performance, so you can find me stonewallperformance.com. I'm also under the same handle on social media for YouTube and Instagram. I'm not hip with the kids, as they say, so I'm not on the TikToks and the Snapchats and stuff. Oh, hey, So, but yeah, you can find me on Instagram, Stonewall Performance, as well as YouTube and Facebook. And then if anybody's interested in terms of LinkedIn as well, you can kind of follow a lot of my professional journey. You just find me David Smith, or you can look up my handle on there.
Dr. David Smith.
Exactly, So, but I'm under my screen name on that one is Butterflyer with no vowels. So BTTRFLYR. Just you put that in there because there's a bajillion David Smiths out there. So, and you can keep up to date on all the crazy career shenanigans that I'm doing in terms of all the sports adventures that I'm having and all the good stuff like that. So yeah, definitely reach out, and connect if you're on the socials, as the kids say, and look forward to hearing from you.
Right on. All right. So I think we can extinguish the torch, if you will, on the Olympics episode. Amy, what are we talking about next week?
Next week, get out your sunscreen and flip-flops because we're going to the beach. We're going to watch Mr. Ed, Season 2, Episode 23, Ed the Beachcomber. Who's the Boss, Season 2, Episode 6, Custody Part 1. Married with Children, Season 3, Episode 21, Life's the Beach. And Friends, Season 4, Episode 1, The One with the Jellyfish.
Yep, beach episodes next week. And until then, we will consider this segment of the sitcom study concluded. Thank you for listening to the Sitcom Study. Tell us what you think or share your own TV tropes and topic ideas by sending a self-addressed stamped email to sitcomstudypodcast@gmail.com or find us on Facebook or Instagram. And if you like the show, consider leaving a rating or review on your podcast app. It helps us boost those precious Nielsen ratings. The Sitcom Study is recorded in front of a live studio dog.